I'm Joy Baglio. I'm the founder and director of Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop, and we're so happy you're joining us this evening for this very exciting launch of Dreams for a Broken World from Essential Dreams Press and series editor and publisher Julie C. Day, with guest editor Ellen Meeropol, and a big shout out also to Celia Jeffries and Karina Bissett. So tonight we'll be listening to 13 authors featured in the anthology and also share some prompts and writing tips. We'll also have 4 prize drawings throughout the evening with chances to win copies of the Dreams anthologies and the first anthology in that series, and also gift cards to Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop. So without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce the editors of the Dreams for a Broken World anthology, series editor and publisher Julie C. Day, and guest editor Ellen Meeropol. Julie C. Day's novella, The Rampant, is a Lambda Award finalist. Her genre-bending collection, Uncommon Miracles, was praised by Nathan Ballingrud, Jeffrey Ford, John Crowley, and Kelly Link. Julie is currently working on her novella Stories of Drish. She is the series editor of the themed charity anthology Weird Dreams Society and Dreams for a Broken World. The Dreams series is published under Day's Reckoning Press imprint, Essential Dreams Press. In addition to her books, she's published over 40 stories in magazines such as Podcastle, Black Static, Interzone, The Dark, and Cincinnati Review. And you can find her online at an aspirand This Julie Day or stillwingingit.com. I'm also thrilled to introduce Ellen Meeropol, guest editor, who is the author of the novels The Lost Women of Azalea Court, Her Sister's Tattoo, Kinship of Clover, On Hurricane Island, and House Arrest, and the play Gridlock. Her dramatic program telling the story of the Rosenberg Fund for Children was produced 5 times between 1997 and 2013, featuring Ossie Davis, Mandy Paddington, Ed Asner, Danny Glover, Pete Seeger, Harry Belafonte, Bill T. Jones, Angela Davis, Eve Ensler, and Howard Zinn. Recent essay and short story publications include Ms. Magazine, Lilith, Guernica, LitHub, Solstice, and Mom Egg Review. Her work has been honored by the Sarton Women's Prize, Women's National Book Association, and the Massachusetts Center for the Book. A founding member of Straw Dog Writers Guild, Ellen coordinates their Emerging Writer Fellowship Program, and you can find her online at ellenmeeropol.com. And I just want to say how absolutely thrilled and honored I am to be a part of this and to be a part of the anthology and to be working with Julie and Ellie. And it's just been such an honor. And this is such a wonderful, an absolutely wonderful book. So I'm so excited for you to experience some of it and meet the wonderful editors who made this all possible. So Julie, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay. Hello and welcome. Thank you, Joy and the Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop for co-sponsoring this event. I really appreciate it. It saved us a lot. It's one of the many generous gestures that have come out of this project. I'm the series editor and publisher of Dreams for a Broken World, which is the second book in the Dreams anthology series. I'm thrilled to have you join so many of the authors in celebrating book's launch. Our fabulous guest editor, Ellen Meeropol, is going to talk about the important work of the Rosenberg Fund for Children, the organization we've chosen to support with this latest anthology. I'm going to focus on the book. Tonight, it all starts and ends with the book. Please remember to spread the word after this event. This themed anthology is a creative powerhouse. Publishers Weekly and Lightspeed Magazine have both praised all 24 stories using words like highly recommended, seriously admirable, and impressive. Tonight, you'll get to hear from 13 of the authors, all of them fantastic. During the chaos of 2020, it became clear I needed the next book in the series to be a multi-genre anthology. There's power in not allowing institutions to define who belongs together. I very much wanted to create a collection of stories that lays bare the barriers that are often used to frame strong creative work as literary or fantasy, environmental or science fiction, and on and on. From a practical perspective, the Rosenberg Fund for Children was the absolutely right organization to support. With so much broken and breaking, it felt important to provide help to those activists putting themselves on the front lines. These folks are fighting for all of us, and too often they're putting themselves at risk. The book's thematic focus ties to all of this. Ellie and I were determined to bring together a broad swath of voices to answer the same thematic questions. What does it mean to live in a fractured and uncertain world? How do we face the ugliness? How do we find a better way forward? To me, the words of author Brian Evanson feel like the best introduction to the readings you're about to hear. And he quote, "Some of these stories explore a world that is fully broken. Others are focused on when it just begins to crack. But what's clear above all is that the world breaks for some groups of people much earlier than others. An inclusive and adept anthology in which each story is a facet for a different perspective on where we've gone or will go wrong. We're hoping these stories will entertain you, make you feel, and provide a vehicle to reflect on the various ways in which our world continues to lurch backward as well as forward." And now to my lovely guest editor, Ellen Brooke.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you, Joy. I'm really pleased to have had the opportunity to serve as guest editor for Dreams for a Broken World. Thank you so much, Julie, for dreaming up this project. I'm also deeply grateful to our authors, not only for the quality, the heart of these stories, but also for your support for the Rosenberg Fund for Children, the RFC. The RFC was started 32 years ago by my husband, Robbie, to honor the legacy of his parents, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, who were executed in 1953 for conspiracy to commit espionage. In truth, they were killed for being communists and Jews and for their resistance, for refusing to name names. The community that tried to save their lives, and once that was not possible, that supported Robbie and his brother during their childhood, was the inspiration for the RFC, which gives grants to the children of targeted progressive activists, grants for cultural programming and emotional support, grants to bring targeted families together and to help young people find their voices. I think about these stories in that context. Our world is broken, and we are part of a strong tradition of working to heal it through storytelling, through activism, through dreaming. Thank you all for being part of this.
To unmute myself and introduce the first author. We have Ben Parzybok coming up first. Ben Parzybok is the author of the novels Couch, a two-time Indie Next Pick, and Sherwood Nation. He founded Gumball Poetry, journal published in Gumball machines, co-ran Project Hamad, an effort to free Guantanamo inmate Adel Hamad, now free, and co-runs Black Magic Insurance Agency, a citywide alternative reality game. He lives in Portland, Oregon. Ben Parzybok.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks very much for having me. Super honored to be among this incredible stable. Can I say stable of writers? I'm as another horse here. I was asked to provide a writing tip, and it's funny because I was walking out of the house to go on a walk, and I was talking to my wife about this, who had a book out last year, and I was like, what kind of writing tip should I provide? And she's like, perambulation, like you're going on a walk right now. And I was like, it is a good, that's really good advice. Like you go, you let your body relax. It's like taking a shower. You should take lots of showers. That helps with writing. And it'll free your creativity. But I was also like, but that's a lie, because I got totally addicted to audiobooks for the last couple of years during the pandemic. And I only listen to audiobooks when I walk. So I don't do any writing at all. And she said, well, you're a fiction writer. If they wanted a true writing tip, then they should ask a nonfiction writer. So that's my writing tip for you this evening. I'm going to read from a piece called How the Demon War Was Won. I hope that the title is somewhat misleading for you, and I'm just going to dip right into it under the idea that we have sort of limited time with everyone. She'd had nightmares, not the nightmares of wartime, filled with the big demons, lurking in dark shadows, harrowing escapes, the horror at looking down and finding part of your own body eaten away. This was different. On the night before her first day as a crosser, she dreamed of being out to dinner with her mother. Her mother had chatted incessantly across from her about the fishing club she joined, about who said what, the neighbors, but every time she looked up, her mother's appearance had altered. The eyes gone red with yellow centers, the mouth elongating with vicious double rows of teeth, the nose curving upward to expose the nostrils, blackened and gnarled, a slick, licey, dark fur, ears that spiraled into evil points. Clearly a demon, but also her mother, who rattled on at her with inane banter. Lauren woke sweaty and confused and a little angry. The anger had not diminished by the time she dropped by her mother's old farmhouse on her way to the gate. She'd meant only to say goodbye, we dare not speak of it, but this could be the final one, goodbye. The truce, miraculously, had already lasted over 9 months. Even now, babies were born outside of wartime, babies who may not, if all went well, spend every night afraid, as humans had done for the previous 1,000 years. I wondered if I'd see you before the big day. Her mother's gaze was intent, searching. Impulsively, she relayed the entire dream to the older woman. Lauren, her mother said, one hand on her hip, the other gesturing defensively with a gaudy glass string of beads interwoven between the fingers. The tone conveyed so much, a seed of indignant disappointment, a sprout of condescension planted among the vast field of muted grief, a gritty frustration at her daughter's inability to move past it all, to vault into the future. Well, Lauren thought, her mother wasn't the one doing the vaulting, was she? I know, Lauren said. Your father would have. I know, Lauren said. Bless his soul. Just let me look at his hands. Lauren held out her own hands, famously like her father's, farmer's hands, strong and calloused, built for the plowing of fields and the planting of bounty. Her mother kissed the open palm of each. You and he can work wonders with these, but I tell you, I actually have joined a fishing club. We meet on the dock every Tuesday evening. Her mother gestured toward the corner of the room, nestled between the wall bearing the history of her mother's hobbies, beads and pottery and watercolors and weaving, and the other, which bore photos of the many friends and family lost, a fishing pole leaned into the corner. So something's going on up there. She pointed with her beaded hand at her own head, her hair coiffed miraculously above. Lauren said. Come here. Her mother held her arms wide for an embrace. Lauren reluctantly let herself be held. Her mother's unflagging confidence and optimism, despite so many catastrophes, was an irksome comfort. You have always been a rock in the storm, the most steadfast of rocks. You have prepared and prepared. This is just a different storm, but you're still a rock, the best rock I've ever known. Okay, Lauren whispered. Okay, her mother said. Then, in a moment of motherly fussiness, notably absent for the last decade, she removed Lauren's crosser's hat, recoiled Lauren's long hair, and reaffixed the hat and its long sash with an aggravating tightness. Her mother, Lauren knew then, was also afraid. She met Roger at their appointed gateway, a short, bearded, somewhat rotund man of 60-something, shaped like a beet or a child's spinning top, and just as nimble. She stood nearly a foot above him, a carrot to his beat. His warmness startled her. She expected a hardened, you better toughen up, get your mind right type of figure, like her trainer, like other heroes of the war she'd met, not this smiling man with the tendency to rest his hands on his own belly. He pumped her hand, told her how happy he was to meet her. She tried to grin through her terror. You thought I'd be taller. I get that a lot. No, it's just... Yes, she realized, it was indeed partly that. He was short. He had a jagged scar across one cheek, which descended into his beard, and belatedly she noted he missed 2 fingers on his left hand. She stared down at that hand. Everyone knew that demons killed first and ate after. The way they marked their kills was to bite off a combination of fingers. He saw she was staring and held up the hand. Guess they thought I was dead. That's why I feel like this, all of this. He gestured wide, to the gate behind him, to the human settlements in the distance. Is bonus time. You scared? She nodded. Seeing his hand certainly hadn't helped. There's nothing to it, he said. Just think of your favorite food. It's waffles for me every time. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Ben. I love that story. Our next reader is Aimee Liu. Aimee Liu is the author of the novels Glorious Boy, Flash House, Cloud Mountain, Face, and several books of nonfiction. She taught for many years in Goddard College's MFA in Creative Writing program. More about her at aimeeliu.net. Please welcome Aimee.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and thank you, Julie and Joy and everybody that has made this happen. It's exciting to be here. So my prompt is, actually, it's a signature on my email that I use. It's a quote that just arrested me when I first heard it from the documentary, The Music of Strangers, which is a film about Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble. And someone in the course of the film says, the answer of the human spirit is to revenge with beauty. And I thought that's a great prompt to motivate your characters, to animate your story. And it also seems like a really great motto for this event and this book. So the answer of the human spirit is to revenge with beauty. My story is from the real world, World War II. And its title is Faith, and it's narrated by an agent of the Special Operations Executive, the SOE. I think that's all I need to tell you to get it going. I was one of her nighttime customers in Hong Kong during the fall of 1941, just before the evacuation. We relied on her services. SOE and OSS agents passed her notes in cipher, scripted inside Sensen wrappers, stuffed into discarded condoms. Some of her customers were the enemy, and she would pick their pockets for useful details, names, addresses, shopping lists. Hours later, we came to complete the relay. She called us her morning customers, no matter what time we saw her. I never slept with her. I may have been the only one who didn't. Why not? My counterpart from the SOE, TL, used to nudge me. She loves us. We're not the enemy. Maybe, but maybe not. In any case, I found her too beautiful in a shipwrecked sort of way. She reminded me of a figurehead with her defiant sea-sprayed pride intact, but stripped of all color and gloss. I admired her and, yes, desired her more than I probably admitted even to myself. But what I loved about her was something entirely different. I loved the way she picked up her child, squatting first in the corner like a peasant, plucking him out of his padding. She would lift him into the crook of her elbow, swaying just so slightly, that wobbly head of thick black hair feathering her naked arm. The baby was 3 months old and slept in a brown wicker basket in the same soulless room where she serviced her customers. One night she told me, he knew we would have a son. I asked her to tell me her story. She asked if she could trust me. I gave her my promise. The ruse was old, familiar, continues to this day. Her family was war-struck in Korea. Father and brothers all vanished. She, her mother, and sisters subsisting on rainwater and roots. Faith was not her name then, but she acted on it nonetheless. When she was 15, the rumor passed around her village. Strong girls could make good money doing factory or domestic work for the Japanese. Her mother and sisters would have one less mouth to feed. She could send her good money home. She stood in the bed of a truck with 20 other girls from the village, not one of them waving goodbye. A neighbor man she had known her whole life drove the truck to the port. The girls were herded onto a black painted ship and shut into rooms like prison cells. No windows, air, or water. The sea was rough and many sickened. They could not tell day from night, which direction or how far from home they traveled. When they were finally allowed on deck, the ship had docked in a large, bustling city, which they were told was Shanghai. Another truck took them from the pier to a big house that looked like an image from the British picture books Faith remembered from the Catholic school she attended until she was 9. She could read, you see. She was not stupid, only poor and trusting. In the picture books, the British houses had wide green lawns and chimney pots, square windows and pitched roofs and vine-covered walls. Inside, they had great rooms with polished floors and chairs that looked like soft, panting animals. Beds that floated high off the floor under tents the nuns called canopies. The house to which she was taken in Shanghai looked just right on the outside, but inside the great rooms had been sliced into cells even smaller than those on the ship. Some of the walls were of wood, some merely fabric partitions. There were no chairs or floating beds, only thin cotton mattresses flat on the floor. A sign above the door read in Japanese, "Comfort Station." Faith was placed in one of the partitions and raped the first night by 4 young sentries, taking turns until she fainted. The next morning, she was slapped awake at 6 a.m. and fed breakfast of gruel by an elderly Chinese man who whispered that she would be bayoneted if she tried to escape. He promised he had seen it happen. At 9, Japanese soldiers formed queues outside the partitions. Each held a ticket and a condom. The first to come told her he loved her. She spat in his face and he broke her jaw. He and 40 others used her that day. Each ticket entitled them to 15 minutes. Sleep was the first basic function she missed. Thanks so much.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. This is Julie trying to do 2 things at once. So I'm trying to fix the link and do this, but I'd like to read the bio for our next reader, Joy. And Joy, you pronounced your name Baglio? Is that correct?
Baglio.
Baglio. I knew I got it wrong. The best. Joy Baglio's fiction appears in the Missouri Review, Tin House, American Short Fiction, the Iowa Review, Conjunctions, and elsewhere. She's received fellowships from Yaddo, Breadloaf, and Sewanee Writers Conferences. This is where you can tell this is not my world. The Elizabeth George Foundation, Vermont Student Studio Center, and the Kerouac Project. She is the founder of Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop, sponsor. And now for Joy.
Thank you so much, Julie. So I'm actually going to share a very quick craft tip. Hold on one second as I navigate to where it is. So I was thinking of something that would maybe relate a little bit to my story in the anthology and what the one I will read the opening for. And I think something that I've been thinking a lot about, especially in terms of speculative fiction, I was thinking like, what would I consider the most helpful advice for a speculative writer or someone weaving magical elements into their fiction? And I really think that it comes, for me at least, it really comes down to making sure that the fantastic or magical element is in some way tied to the emotional core of the story. And to think about, how does the magical element really illuminate? How does it add complexity to the emotional dilemma at the story's heart? So that's the real human issue, the real core of the story. And then the fantastic element is sort of letting us experience that human element in sort of more of a visceral, more of a gritty way even. So they really work hand in hand, the heart, the emotional core, and the fantastic or speculative magical element. And I actually have a prompt for you too, but because I don't have a lot of time, I will actually share it in the chat after. So this is the opening of Belly of the Beast, which is originally published in American Short Fiction and is also, if you can finish it, I probably won't get to the end, so it's in the anthology. It's Saturday night, and the beast has swallowed my husband. One minute he was there, the next gone. Just a shout, half smothered as the creature engulfed him. I didn't see the actual swallowing. I arrived seconds later in time to see the wolfish thing licking its jowls. It's not like anything you've ever seen. Eyes small and black like papaya seeds, hispid hair covering its limbs, claws like small sickles, tongue long and leathery. I would have attacked it, grabbed a fire iron or my husband's reenactment sword if I had been feeling heroic. But there was something about the way the creature sighed, tired after its work consuming him, that made me pause and watch. It sank onto the bed where my husband had been lying only moments before, whimpered like something lost, and seemed to take no notice of me. When I whisper to my friends over the phone of what has happened, they reiterate the stories we've all heard of women in our neighborhood whose men have disappeared. The retired teacher whose husband vanished ostensibly nearby, so close that she sometimes catches glimpses of him in their driveway, at the corner store, on their street. The 3 young mothers whose men stay out later until one night they don't return at all. The wife who claims hers was spirited away by a herd of deer. At least you know what happened, my friend says. And of course, this is true. I knew this was coming. I'd seen the creature skulking in the yard all month, yet did nothing, refusing to believe it could harm us. Last week, it was outside the door, and yesterday I found its dark hairs all along the bedside. What does it mean that I saw the warning signs and did nothing but pray they'd go away, that I was somehow mistaken? Later that day, I hear what sounds like crying, loud and guttural, and I think, if anything, the creature must be thirsty. So I creep near it with a coffee tin full of water, leave it on my husband's nightstand, and sleep on the couch that night, one eye open, wide awake at the slightest sound. The next day, the beast still seems sleepy, so I let him stay undisturbed. I'm not surprised to find that he understands speech quite well and can answer back, mostly barely intelligible words in the deepest growl, but sometimes so like my husband that it stops my breath, sets every molecule in me spinning. Perhaps he's stolen my husband's voice, I think, breathed it in, preserved it, and I don't know if this is more comfort or horror. Still, I bring him water and soup, ask if there's anything else he needs. Is he sick, sleep deprived, depressed? No, he shakes his bestial head. He isn't any of those things. After a week, a strange thing happens. I'm creeping around the creature where he's standing by the bedroom windows when I glimpse my husband's face behind the whorls of dark fur. It shocks me to see because for days now, I've been contended with the creature alone. It's almost as if a light is shining from somewhere inside the beast itself. The thick tangles of hair that cover the creature are illuminated, and my husband's face flashes, barely perceptible, as if just behind a layer of skin and fur. I cry when I see it and sink down on the bed, much to the bewilderment of the beast, who prowls into the next room, growling, no patience for such emotion. Later, I tell myself it was a trick of the light. The westerly sun often stabs through our ground level windows, brightening all in its path. But the next day, I'm sitting on the foot of the bed while the beast, propped up on a pillow, guzzles a salad I made. And I see my husband's fingers moving inside the creature's mouth, as though he has simply fallen into some large black costume, a well of fur and teeth and claws. That's not the end, but I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
That was fabulous. I'm going to call out to Joy, give her a moment to catch her breath, because we're going to do our first drawing now. So we're shifting hats for a moment.
So if you put your name, if you RSVP'd, then your name has been put into this wonderful, colorful bowl of slips of paper, and you are in here, and we are going to do our first drawing for a prize.
So if you're the winner, just let us know in the chat so we know that you're here. And if not, we'll keep going.
Yes. So basically what I'll do is I'll draw a name, I'll read the name, and if it's you, just say here, and then we'll mark that that person has received the prize. Let me just quickly say what the prizes are. This drawing will be for an e-bundle of the 2 Dreams anthologies, the first in the series, and Dreams for a Broken World, the second in the series, and a print bundle of the 2 Dreams anthologies, as well as a 2-hour, 1-day workshop at Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop. We are completely virtual, so no matter where in the world you are, you can attend PVWW. All right, let us do it. And we'll do 3 more of these. So there's a few more chances. Let me just pick one here. All right.
It's blue.
Blue, and the winner is Madeline Haybear.
Madeline, are you here? Let's see if I can see you in the list of people. I don't see Madeline. Oh no, Madeline is here. I see Madeline Haybar here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
Congratulations.
All right, Madeline, we will be in touch afterwards.
Okay. So our next reader is Zigzag Clayborn. Zigzag Clayborn is the author of The Brothers Jetstream, Leviathan, and its sequel, Afro Pups Are the Antennae of the Universe. Other works include By All Our Violent Guides, Neon Lights, and About the Contributors, 283 Conversations with Idris. He is the 2021 Kresge Foundation Literary Fellow.
Thank you, Ellen. Hello, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. And, for prompt, well, not only prompt, but just a little bit of advice for anybody out there who's thinking about writing or just creating anything is don't be afraid to feel something, let the cracks form and fill them in with your imagination. I think that's about as good a piece of advice as we could hope for this year after everything we've gone through. So feel it, use it, and then just embrace it. And for that, I'm going to read a selection from my story in the anthology. The story is called Finding Ways. And it's kind of all about, just finding that crack, just realizing it's there and moving forward from it. His mother fit in a box, a sturdy plastic box, black, meant to be dignified. When they gave it to him, he had no idea what to do with it. They mentioned urns, which seemed suffocating, and vials on necklaces, which baffled him because he had no intention of wearing his mother as bling. But they prodded his indecision. Perhaps a simple, base level, inexpensive urn, or any selection from my catalog of keepsakes for your family. The family was scattered around the world, a world experiencing a worldwide illness, a very quiet virus, one that pretended it wasn't there, then assumed ownership as though intent on remodeling. The gentrification virus, the internet called it. It hadn't killed his mother. What it did was effectively close off the world. Borders, airlines, bridges. The family had never been close. Now, following a funeral where only Benjamin and 3 others were allowed to attend, mother's friends being old, he pled with them to remain home. There was literally no intimate family opportunity to grow closer. One sister was stationed in an active war zone, the other in near permanent quarantine in a part of the world too attractive to the world's truest disease, the type that always found a way to spread where unwanted, the affluent. Inside the box, a bag of ashes. He trusted them when they said they were mother's last remains. He trusted them when they repeatedly assured him they were taking care of Mrs. Clara August every time he called prior to the memorial service to make sure there was nothing more he needed to do. He'd seen her die. She'd fallen. He hadn't been able to take care of her at that moment in any way. Nothing outside of sitting slumped with a racing heart, waiting for the ambulance to arrive, park, shut its driver and passenger doors, come up the stairs, knock, and bring officiousness in with the winter chill. Questions which he'd answered numbly, the same as he had the police who arrived, the same as every yes, no, she didn't smoke, no medical issues. I have her insurance information. Autopsy. Benjamin August knew himself to be alive, but Ma's death made him invisible to every system and function death engineered. So sorry for your loss was not the hug of an obeah from back home. It wasn't the power of a human body poured into another human body, which had lost more than another's physical shell. In this country, at this time, it had to do. Mother's box had a white sticker on it. The cremation company's first name first, because commerce always, then printed in plain type. This temporary receptacle contains the cremated remains of, with Ma's name, the date of cremation, and a number. Ma's secret number, 25290, as though she were an agent her entire life, entirely unbeknownst to her family. Note, the sticker ended, for perpetual security, a permanent receptacle or urn should be provided. Well, one wasn't. They were for sale. He had no money. He had a small bungalow that she shared with him in her old age. They enjoyed grocery shopping together. Ever since arthritis had made the use of her left hip a random thing, it was really the only time she got out, hobbling to the car, complaining about having to use the store's electric scooter, using it anyway as he trailed her, ready to reach things on high shelves, ready to try suggested new meats when they were on sale. For some reason, he thought the ashes should remain cool, so the box now sat atop his refrigerator. He knew the refrigerant didn't leak upward, but it seemed as if it should, which was enough. It was important that things seemed to make sense. When he opened the box, there was a plastic bag, a thick, filmy one. The bag had a metal tag with that same number, 25290. He and Mother loved science fiction movies. She was forever Unit 25290 now. And that's about 5 minutes of that story. Thank you all very much.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Zigzag.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're a part of this project. Zigzag Story is one of the originals. We have a mixture and every story is great, but they all give me chills actually. Our next reader is Céline Keating. Céline Keating is the award-winning author of 2 novels, Layla from 2011 and Play for Me 2015, and co-editor of the anthology On Montauk, a literary celebration. Her novel, The Stark Beauty of Last Things, will be published in October of 2023. And now, Céline.
Thank you so much, Julie and Ellie as well. And what a thrill to be part of this. I am not a prompt person, but there is one that I really like. And so I was going to share that. It's to write a description of a room from the point of view of a character who's feeling some emotion. So let's say you write a description, a paragraph from the point of view of somebody suffering a recent loss. Then write the exact same description from the point of view of a character who's feeling angry. Then another option, a character feeling joy. How would the room and its objects appear depending on the mood of the character? What things would the character notice or not notice? And, it allows you to sort of see how differently description reflects character and character's feelings. So that's my tip for tonight. My story in the collection is called Home, and it's excerpted from the novel that Julie just mentioned is coming out next October. And it's set in Montauk and has 4 main characters. And I'll just be reading something that was excerpted and created a story of it with one of the characters called Molly. At the fish market, Vince told Molly that by the end of the month, they would be cutting back to just 3 days a week through the holidays, and then would shut altogether until spring. It was what they did every year, but she hadn't known. Seeing her face, Vince kept saying how sorry he was. Not much would stay open in Montauk over the winter. Maybe she could apply to a Kmart for holiday work, although it would mean a 30-minute commute to Bridgehampton. She'd majored in psychology, but never figured out what to do with her degree, even if she weren't living in a quasi-rural area without a wide range of options. On the way home, she passed the edge of the woods and fields where the fire had raged the previous month. It was desolate with blackened tree limbs and grasses. Even the soil appeared scorched. She would never forget Billy's face covered in soot and sweat when he came home exhausted and shaken from the fire. She turned down the rutted road to their house. As she reached the clearing, she was uneasy to see a fancy white car out of place beside Billy's beat-up truck. The developer angling to buy the house had been leaving messages asking to stop by. Billy hadn't returned the calls. She ran her eyes over the curled up shingles, the mold darkening the top of the door under the eaves where the sun didn't reach, and the sagging wooden steps. The house canted slightly, but its small proportions were reminiscent of fairy tale cottages, dormers like jaunty eyebrows over the windows. In the living room, Billy and another man were talking. Billy stopped mid-sentence as she walked in, and she couldn't read his expression. The man, dressed in a soft, charcoal-colored V-neck sweater, rose, hand outstretched. Theodore Malaxi. His face was thin and very tan, a few age spots gracing his cheeks. Molly sat next to Billy on the couch. From outside came the cough of an outboard motor. "We were talking about your lovely property here," Malaxi said. "Billy tells me you're opposed to selling." Molly shot a glance at Billy. He picked up the white rock on the coffee table they used as a paperweight and began shifting it from one hand to the other. "It's not my call," Molly said. "He cares what you want," Malaxi smiled. "How can I change your mind?" "It's been in Billy's family for generations. It's his legacy, his brother's legacy." Her words tripped over each other. "Ah, sentiment," Malaxi nodded, as if saying, "Ah, foolish youth. You could get something far nicer with what I would pay you. A beautiful new home, start fresh." Molly's jaw set. Had Billy told him they'd been talking about marrying, eventually trying for a baby? The boat motor coughed again, and through the window behind Malaxi's head, she saw a small boat passing by. When she said nothing, he continued, "My dear, my company has big dreams for this entire stretch of waterfront." "Build around us," Molly said. "I don't think so," Malaxi chuckled, as if amused by an adorable child. "Property taxes are going up. Why not cash out? Set yourself up for life." Billy stood abruptly. "We'll give it thought." "The faster you sign, the better. Hold out and it'll cost you." Malaxi moved swiftly across the room and shut the door decisively behind him. "Oh my God," Molly breathed. Billy's face was flushed. "He's such a prick. I wouldn't sell to him if I had a choice." "But you don't have to sell, do you?" Billy ran his hands over his face. "I'm just trying to be responsible. He's right that it would be the smart thing. I know you don't want me to. Billy, it's not my decision. We're together now, Molly. We decide together." Outside, the boat motor abruptly died. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Céline. I look forward to reading the novel next spring. Our next reader is Marie Vibbert. Marie Vibbert has published over 70 short stories, including multiple appearances in Analog and China's science fiction world. Her debut novel, Galactic Hellcats, is about a female biker gang in outer space rescuing a gay prince. Vibbert played women's professional football with the Cleveland Fusion. By day, she's a computer programmer.
Okay, I never know what's going to which bio I'm going to get. I'd mix it up too much. Okay, so my prompt is think of a technology that has changed something in life and now talk about it on a front porch, because all the most important things in life happen on the front porch. And I'm going to give a piece of advice too, which is delete your first page. Whatever your first page you wrote, just delete it. I find maybe I give that advice too often. Okay, so I'm going to read from my story in the anthology Subscription Life. Subscription Life. The worst thing about selling out is liking it. I love my ducky shower curtain and my high-ceilinged apartment with its faux antique fixtures. Everything smells new but looks authentic, not like Mom's Thomas Kincaid village with the poured concrete cobblestone. No label put work into building a detailed environment. The apartment floors creak like they ought to, but only in less traveled areas. The doors have seated glass transoms over them, and my mailbox is brass filigree, and the front door locks with a real metal key. It feels important in my hand, heavy and smooth. I step outside, and there's a man, gaunt and dressed in layers of mismatched clothes. He sits on the stoop next door, wrapped in a comforter, a paper coffee cup in his hand. He lifts the cup and toast. Welcome to the neighborhood. You live here? I ask. I sound stupid. Precisely here, he winks. Of course. No label is an open community. It's why I chose it. There's no patrolled border, no gate over the entrance roads. Homeless people are safe here. My subscription fees, my lifetime contract pay for that safety. A knot of guilt lets go in my gut. I'm not a traitor to the people who can't pass the entrance requirements. I'm part of the solution. He tells me his name is Doug. I tell him I'm on my way to my first day at work. All days are the first day. You'll never wake to the same one twice, Doug says sagely and waves me off. I feel blessed by his wave, set off on adventure. I'm looking forward to spending mornings sitting on the stoop with Doug, trading philosophical thoughts. Maybe if I tell Mom about him, she'll stop saying I'm wasting my degree. Ruthie's Things is around the corner and 4 doors down, flanked by other picturesque shops with a single story of apartments overhead. The walk is pleasant. Other people come and go with pets and strollers. There are young trees regularly spaced with adorable wrought iron fences around them. Selling out is a privilege. I passed a heavy credit check and had to prove 4 lines of American citizenship in my family. This is why most people associate subscription lifestyle communities with polite, hateful racists. Why I'm still not sure I did the right thing. The shop has its door open to the street, the big brass bell hanging dormant, so I knock on the frame as I enter. A slender black woman with light brown curls pulled back in an orange scarf is frowning at a folding card. She waggles her fingers, frowns some more, and then drops the card on top of a box. Welcome to Ruthie's Things. I'm Ruthie. Really? She nods slowly, lips rolled in. They name the store after the manager in every city. Maybe manufactured authenticity is still, in a way, authentic. I'm Joan. The agency said you'd be expecting me? Ruthie shows me the dishes she is unpacking. The store is intended to feel like a secondhand shop, but all the items are new. The dishes are all different, but only 3 sizes designed to stack well in the box. The card shows how Ruthie is supposed to set them up on the distressed sideboard. The design looks random. It might be random. Arranging the dishes is fun, like solving a puzzle. I'm leaving the instruction card out, Ruthie says with a fierce smile. It's a silent protest. Ruthie's snark adds that touch of realism I was missing. No label welcomes irony at its own expense. At home, I have trouble undressing, knowing there are cameras recording me for consumer research. They say they blur the privates automatically, but I still change for bed inside the shower stall. Yesterday, I threw out the last of my old clothes. I can only own known label approved items in my apartment, in my drawers. I feel silly, like I'm in costume, like the cameras are inside my clothes. I walk back from the bedroom to the kitchen and back in my yellow nightie. There's no one here. The temperature is comfortable and the nightie is slippery. I curl up on the quirky mid-century sofa and open my phone to read the news. Except I can't find the news sites I like. Everything forwards to sanitized, dull sites. I try personal links. The Social Justice Librarians Working Group is a 404. But the Marvel movie gossip is still there. Open Science doesn't load. I feel more watched than I did changing clothes. And I'll stop there. And please find me at marievibbert.com and check out my new novel, The Gods Awoke, which just released this year and is about a goddess with amnesia.
That was fabulous. We're going to do our next drawing. So, Joy.
Let's see. Feel like, oh, another blue one. Okay,
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Blue.
That really wanted to come out. So this is Rachel RC. Rachel from Ludlow.
Oh my God, I am here. Thank you. I'm very honored.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Okay. We're going to do our next reader, or I'm going to read the bio for our next reader, which is Lisa. Hang on a second. Let me pull it up. Lisa C. Taylor. Lisa C. Taylor is the author of 5 poetry collections, most recently Interrogation of Morning, Arlen House, Syracuse University Press, 2022. She is also the author of 2 short story collections, Impossibly Small Spaces, 2018, Arlene House, Syracuse University Press, and Growing a New Tale, 2015. She offers online workshops through writers.com and elsewhere. And now, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you so much to Julie and to Ellie for putting this together. It's amazing, and I feel very honored to be in everyone's presence tonight. So my craft tip is about contradictions in characters. It's something I dearly love to do. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of things you can play with where a character seems to be a certain way, but has some other part of their personality that is completely surprising. Example, a professional boxer who has a collection of dolls and is afraid of thunderstorms, or a ballerina who spends weekends as a volunteer firefighter. So I just kind of like to add those kind of quirks and contradictions in characters because unpredictability makes our stories interesting. And I'm going to read you a little excerpt from my story, which is called Leash Laws. No one knows when his or her tree time will come. Some folks seem to be glued to the earth with sinews underground, like electrical wires. They talk to each other in a way that wastes language, not at all how animals communicate. I speak to Serge by humming, even though his room is 2 doors down. He knows my language, came from a deciduous forest in Maine, and once helped a black bear find a suitable den for hibernation. Because he's mostly human, he doesn't need to hibernate. He used to stay at the St. Francis shelter when the snows came. Like me, he dislikes human food except for berries and nuts, an occasional bird. Carol brings me granola in a plastic container. Glass is better because it's shiny, but the strongmen won't allow it. They are used to making the rules, even ones that make no sense, like when Carol can visit and how much time I'm allowed in the sunroom, where I can watch the jays raid the bird feeder, see the cherry trees shriek into blossom. Carol always tells me I'll be home soon, and I think of my favorite maple tree. I don't wound it like some people who insert a metal tap in the tree's torso, hang a bucket to collect the blood. They don't understand that it is the sap that keeps the tree strong. It's important to keep one's fluids to oneself. Susan, time for your pill. Eliza is a strongman, even though she's female. She wears the uniform of blue cotton with white whispery shoes. I know she wants to read my dreams so she can understand the language of plants and animals, but I don't let her. I've learned how to stick the pill in my left back molar, the one with a cavity. When I go to the loo, I spit it in the toilet and flush, watch it spiral down into the septic system. But I worry about fish losing their dreams. I open my mouth like a good robot. Eliza put me on step 5 because I'm one of the well-behaved ones. I don't tie my sheets into knots or spit out mashed potatoes. As long as I can have some nuts and berries, I am quiet as a snake. It is April, and soon they'll open up the courtyard. Carol can take me outside and maybe through the gate to Keeper's Park down the street. You have to be a 6 to go there, but all it takes is opening my mouth and sitting in a semicircle when strongman Dr. Benton comes in. Click, clack, click. How do you feel about that, Susan? Click, clack, clack. I feel fine, Dr. Benton. There's a dogwood sapling outside the window that has been trying to get my attention. She shakes her greening limbs and tells me stories about the vole that lives underground. I promise to save her some water from the pink plastic pitcher by my bed, so her buds will open like promises. And that's just a short excerpt of Leash Laws, which is in the anthology. And I'll drop my website into the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I love that story. Our next reader is Cynthia Robinson Young. Cynthia Robinson Young lives and writes in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She's the author of the chapbook Migration, a finalist in the Georgia Author of the Year Award. Her work has appeared in a variety of publications, including Across the Generations, The Amistad, The Writer's Chronicle, and Sixfold. She's currently working on a novel. Cynthia.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'll start with my prompt. The story that I'm going to read is an excerpt from my novel in progress. I spent a lot of time reading African folktales, folklore, and Gula and Geechee culture, which I continue to do, to see if there's a correlation between them and the stories that I heard growing up. An example was when I was younger, I frequently experienced the feeling of trying to wake up from my sleep and not being able to move a muscle, like just being frozen. And in the morning, my grandmother with a straight face told me that meant a witch was riding me. And then there are family stories that I grew up hearing over and over, which was basically a passing down of our history, how we got to where we live now, things like that. And it's all based on changing the outcome of a traumatic story that they lived. So my prompt would be for you guys to think of a family story or even some sort of superstition that your family believed in, or something like why a certain family member acts the way they act, anything, and to write a story or a poem about it. So my story is called Why Mama May Believed in Magic. Mama May, 1860. Once upon a time, and a not so long ago, when it was good times for white folks and the worst of times for any one of us who were forced to be around white folks, there was magic. We needed it. We had been captured by a nightmare from which we could not awake. But I brought my magic with me from the Ivory Coast, keeping it close and locked inside where no one could take it away unless I gave it to them to hold. My mother gave it to me in my nightmare, the one I had dreamed the first night I knew I was separated from her forever. In the dream, she told me I could choose the magic and what kind of magic it would be. I saw our people flying over the waters, when the white men wanted our mothers and daughters, not caring if we were bleeding or nursing or whatever. It was the only time they released us from the chains and dragged us up from below to the deck of night. That was when I saw our people flying between the stars, slicing through the blue-black sky. Starlight and moonlight shone on their black bodies and on the Black Sea. I knew where they were going. They were flying back home to their families in Africa, and I longed to fly away too, but I didn't have that kind of magic to rise up off the ship deck to join them. I wish I did. Before I got on this ship, I stood in a room, still in Africa, still with the rest of my kidnapped people, in a hut that was not a home. All I could see through the window was water and more water, the color of the sky when the sky is blue. It was our holding place until we got on that water that looked like it led to the end of the earth. I wish I could have found a way to release those shackles that connected us to each other, but that wasn't the kind of magic I had either. And now I have left my home, my land, and I am living on this water, moving farther and farther away from what I've always known since before I knew who I was. If I was not below, lying in vomit and shit in the shadow of death, a hell on earth so unimaginable, I cannot bear to bring back the smells, the cries, the heat. Then I was lying on the deck, on my back, and the men were holding me down, pressing their stinking bodies into me, stabbing the insides of me. I was only 10 years old, not even old enough to bleed. That was when I saw the people flying. Only my eyes were free enough to follow them until they became shadows, and then they were gone. Thank you.
That was hard, wonderful, and rather perfect. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
The next reader up is Veronica Schanoes. And then after that, we'll do it. Veronica Schanoes is an American author of fantasy stories and an associate professor at King's College, CUNY. Her novella, Burning Girls, was nominated for the Nebula Award, the World Fantasy Award, won the Shirley Jackson Award. She lives in New York City. Burning Girls and Other Stories was her debut collection, and it's fabulous. Veronica?
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you've done on this amazing anthology. And thank you for having us all here. I have less a prompt and more of a tip, which is this story that I wrote for the anthology is called The People's Palace of Glass. And it came about because I saw a woman holding a tote bag called, which had printed on it the words, The Museum of Glass. And instead of the sensible thing, which would be to think of a museum dedicated to the history of glass, which is fascinating, actually. I wrote a chapter in my dissertation on it. I thought of a museum made of glass. And it became a palace of glass in my head, which, given my background, very quickly became the People's Palace of Glass. It mirrors a process that happened when I discovered the existence of something called the Mouse Brain Library, which is a real thing. You can look it up. So I guess my real tip here is to just keep your eyes open, because the world is very, very strange. And there are a number of strange word combinations in it that you don't even have to make up yourself, like the Mouse Brain Library, which is, again, I emphasize, a real thing. All right, I'm going to this is a pretty short fable. I'll probably read the first couple pages of it, and we'll see where it ends. Once upon a time, there were a king and a queen and a prince and a princess and numerous servants, and they all lived in a gigantic palace of glass. Every floor, wall, and ceiling was made of glass. All the fixtures and furniture were made of glass, crystal clear and gleaming, sending sparks of light bouncing in all directions. The palace kept legions of staff busy, as every inch had to be polished free of fingerprints and random debris every morning, on top of the staff a royal family would normally have. So much labor and money went into the upkeep of the glass palace, in fact, that it drained the surrounding kingdom dry. And the only source of wealth became tourists drawn by the warm weather and the glass palace and the illicit opportunities for debauchery made possible by organized crime. But now the sunburned tourists have fled, and the waiters and waitresses from the casinos are trembling with fear or excitement or joy or all three. The gangsters who had played hand after hand of cards had seen the writing on the wall and gotten the hell out before anybody else. They had emptied bank accounts and left weeks and weeks ago their suitcases full of good liquor and fine powders. You don't rule the underworld by hanging around when you know you're both outmanned and outgunned. They had been drawn by the opportunities created by the royal family's need for money, and they knew when their time was up. The royal family had resisted fleeing. They had not run for any private planes while carrying bags of fancy luggage, even when the cadre of corporate CEOs that surrounded them had done so and begged them to come with them. The palace will take care of us, the king had assured his friends. It is enchanted. It has preserved our family for so long under glass, safe from the elements, and it will not abandon us now. The royal family stayed in the glass palace. And indeed, the palace kept them safe, as the palace guards fended off the once beleaguered citizenry turned brave. But the casinos weren't empty, not anymore. The men and women now filling the casinos were clean for the first time in weeks, for some of them since the campaign had begun. They had showered in shifts, with the majority at any one time ready to defend their locations against any remnants of the royal army, but there were none. The royal army had all fled or been killed by the time the revolutionaries had reached the city. They had been defeated in clash after clash, their ranks depleted by death and desertion, and all the remaining soldiers wanted now was to blend in quietly with the rest of the populace. A few of the revolutionary generals sat at what had once been a blackjack table, examining maps and other papers. They were sipping from glasses of strong liquor, rum or vodka, just a finger or two each to celebrate their victory. They had taken the capital city, but the palace of glass was nowhere to be found. There was just a massive blank, dirty hole in the ground where it had once been, and the generals had no way to account for this. So in between coordinating food and medicine for their soldiers and reestablishing supply lines for the cities and coaxing various government bureaucrats back to their jobs and doing all the other things you must do after the end of the world to nurture what remains, they searched maps for where the Palace of Glass might have hidden itself. It was enchanted after all and surely had such powers. Finally, they sent out a search party into the surrounding forests, the forests that had provided cover for them, shade for them, food and water for them. Surely the forests would offer up the palace as well. Leonardo was at the head of the search party, and he hated it. The night before his way out of the city, when word had gotten around about his mission, a middle-aged woman had come to him. All he had wanted had been to get a good night's sleep, but the woman was twisted by worry, wringing her hands, and the lines in her face had become grooves, and the shadows under her eyes were deeper and darker than the shadows he remembered hiding among in the forests. "You're going to find the palace," she said. He nodded. "And the people in it?" He shrugged. "If they're still there." "Please," she said, "my daughter. My sister is the palace cook. She brought my daughter there as a scullery maid. Please bring my daughter back unharmed, please." Leonardo thought about what he could promise. He had no particular wish to harm servants, though servants who had fled along with the royal family and the entourage of corrupt industrialists they had encouraged indiscriminately in exploitation could not necessarily be trusted. But had they fled? Had the palace given this woman's daughter any warning, any time to get out to join her mother? He didn't know, and he resented being put in a position to have to judge. "We won't harm your daughter," he said, "unless we have to. I will try to bring her back." He and his men had been struggling through the forests that surrounded the capital city for days with no shower and short rations, carrying all kinds of gear and weaponry. They were tired and in pain, and that had been one thing when they had been fighting the people's fight against the corrupt royal family and the bourgeois pigs and their flunkies. But it was quite another just to search out a glass palace that was probably at this point streaked with dirt and bird shit, either abandoned or housing whatever remained of the royal family and their staff, irrelevant relics of the old world with nothing more to plunder. If they had been out there among the people trying to raise a counter-revolution, he could have understood searching for them then as well. But nobody had heard anything from the royal family since the capital had fallen. Perhaps the wolves had gotten them, or the tigers. screw this, he thought. And I think that's the end of 5 minutes, so we'll stop there.
I wish we all could be together to so we could all hear the applause.
So the next reader is Jan Maher. Jan's novels, Heaven, Indiana, Earth as It Is, and her short fiction collection, The Persistence of Memory and Other Stories, have each won Kirkus Best of designations. Her stage play, Most Dangerous Women, celebrates a century of the international women's peace movement. She's currently working on her third novel.
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you, Julie, so much for inviting me to be part of this. I'm going to say this right now. My keyboard is broken, and so I have not been able to say in the chat how much I've enjoyed everybody's reading, and I can't type my website into the chat, so I will just say it is janmaher.com. I'm going to share I don't know if it's a tip or a prompt. It's really a make your own prompt out of, the keyword is eavesdrop. I love to write in cafes, and COVID's been hard on me in that regard. When I get a little bit stuck, I just stop and I start to listen to the conversation around me, and I grab a phrase and I jot it down, and I make myself need to work it in somehow to what I'm doing. Gets me out of the rut and keeps me moving along. So that's my tip to share. I'm going to be reading the very end of the story. The protagonist, the needs to know here is she's 99. Her son has hidden her car keys because he doesn't think she's safe to drive. So she's taken her granddaughter's bike to ride to a lunch appointment. And the last time she rode a bike was decades before, when there were coaster brakes. So we're going to pick the story up near the end here. Halfway point, she lifts her hands into the air just for a second or two. Yes, she can still do it. They want her to move into a home. Pshaw. When she says it in company, they mock her for her old-fashioned speech. Here on the open, empty road, she shouts it out. Pshaw, I can take care of myself. She pedals harder, picks up speed. She coasts downhill past a clump of service berries. She never sees them when she's driving past, but now they jump out at her, inviting her to stop on the way back and pick enough for a jar of jam. Approaching the intersection now, she backpedals to slow down. The pedals offer no resistance. The bike speeds on. Pop, how the hell do you stop this thing? And coming from the left on the crossroad, a mammoth semi. On she zooms, clutching the rubber handlebar grips, unaware that the braking system she so desperately wants is a mere inch from her white knuckles. If she's lucky, the truck will skedaddle right on through and get out of the way. Then she can survive the intersection and aim for the grass in front of the cafe. That's bound to slow her down at least a little. But the truck, too, is slowing down, preparing to turn. She barrels on. Damn it, she yells. I want to celebrate my 100th. Some ancient part of her mind heeds the call. While her conscious mind holds on for dear life, the feral brain makes a series of crucial decisions. Lean to the left, turn the wheel, register the horrified look on the part of the truck driver, narrowly miss the collision, correct for leaning too far to the left. Oh no, another steeper downhill now. No one coming? No one coming. U-turn, stabilize, breeze. At last, she feels the bicycle begin to slow down. Pedal, steady. She barks the command at her hands, and miraculously they obey. Ease over to the edge of the road, ready for one last turn into the cafe parking lot. A car ahead. You can do it. Remember to signal your turn this time. Steady. She hits the curb, and the bike, surprised by the sudden change of terrain, skids sideways and bucks her into the drainage ditch that runs along the driveway, her skirt immodestly askew. The bike falls back into the path of the oncoming motorist. A crunch, the squeal of brakes, voices shouting, hubbub aplenty. Her hip hurts, but whose wouldn't? Otherwise, everything seems to be working. The crowd reaches her just as she's about to stand up. Don't try to move, stay right there, hold still, an ambulance is on the way. Oh, for goodness sake, cancel it, she insists, and hauls herself up out of the cattails, dripping muddy water. The bike, alas, is mangled beyond rideability, but she is miraculously unscathed. No, she is fine, really, and about to be late. The skirt's a mess, but it will dry. She'll take the outside steps to the balcony so she won't track dirt through the cafe. After lunch, she calls son Matt for a ride home. He bellows and fumes, fusses and grumbles. Could have been killed, crazy old lady, retirement home, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you won't let me drive, what choice do I have? Fine, fine. If you want to kill yourself, go ahead. Just don't say I didn't try to drum some sense into your ancient contrarian head. He slaps her license and keys down on the table. The next day, she drives to the bicycle shop to pick out a replacement for the one she totaled. Matt goes along, begrudgingly acknowledging that her skills as a driver are consummate. Well, adequate is actually the word he's willing to part with. At least, he grouses, you'll have a seatbelt on the next time you run into something. They pick out a shiny new bike for Celia, purple and glittery. While she pays for it, Matt browses the accessories, giving Marie an opportunity to chat up the nice young sales clerk. So, Sonny, she says, how exactly do you stop one of these? Thank you.
Oh man, that was fantastic. Thank you. It's really nice to, you're a great reading voice too, a great voice and a great reader. We have one more reader, and then we're actually going to do 2 drawings. So a bonus drawing, so to speak. Robert V.S. Redick's debut novel, The Red Wolf Conspiracy, was a finalist for the SFX Novel Award. Other books include the Fire Sacraments epic fantasy series and the Chithrand Voyage Quartet. I apologize, Robert. He is a winner of the New Millennium Writings Award and a finalist for the Book Nest Award and the Thomas Dunn Award. And now, Robert V.S. Redick.
Hello, you all. And I want to say, as others have said, what a true honor it is to be part of this, both because of the cause it's supporting and because of the really wonderful company I'm in this anthology. So thanks to Ellie and Julie and everybody. I'm just going to read from my story for 2 pages. And what you need to know is that this is, well, this is a very, very, very dark story. But one thing I feel like I should let you know is that although you won't see much of a glimmer of it in these couple of pages, there really is hope at the end of the story. And oh yeah, and I was a little bit of thoughts about writing advice. What I would share, and what I find myself sharing with my students and with others over the years is, it is important to think about an audience, but the audience that is out there can be a sort of an overwhelming concept, either because it's not there or because it's potentially gigantic and it's hard to wrap your brain about either of those. But I found it useful to think about just one specific person who I could imagine as an ideal reader, somebody I know, someone who's smart and perceptive and sensitive. And I keep that person bookmarked, and it's not the same person over time. But when I want to think about the language and the sort of joy in storytelling that would reach people, I think about that person, and it becomes more concrete. So that's my little bit of advice. And so the story's called Red Velvet Ant. Here's all you need to know, because I'm not reading from the beginning. Typical near future country Virginia family, a lot like mine would be if I'd been, born a few years later. And we've got a boy named Dylan who's very worried about his younger sister Maddie, who has a terrible autoimmune disease, and he really hasn't had time to worry about too much else than Maddie. And then the apocalypse comes to town, not to put too fine a point on it. In this case, it's the apocalypse in the form of an engineered sort of bioweapon. And so we've got Dylan, his young sister Maddie, mom and dad.
Uh-oh. Did Robert get broken up? Or is that just me? I'll tell you what I'm going to do here, because Robert is gone. But what I'd like to do, unless he can log back in, is I'm going to read briefly from the beginning for him, unless he comes back in. If everyone's all right with that, I'll read for 2 minutes and hopefully he'll join us again. So it won't be any setup. I'll just read the beginning. Red velvet ant. We crawled under the juniper, and when a branch grazed her temple, I pressed my sleeve to the thin line of blood. All better. Nothing to worry about. She looked up at me, weighing my sincerity. You're barely scratched, I said. Stop worrying. Who's worrying? Said Maddie, terror in her eyes. We're full of these things, these platelets, I said. They make your blood sticky when it needs to be. Otherwise, we'd be dead, wouldn't we? If we cut our little toe, it would just run out like water from a bag. Miss Randolph's my teacher, said Maddie, not you. The limbs of the juniper were bleached and twisted like something hauled from the sea. Its limbs nearly brushed the ground, but when we crawled under them, we were in a hollow where the needles lay in drifts. Maddie checked the hollow space by the juniper trunk where she kept her plastic stegosaurus. Hola, Miguel, she said. You've gotten strong, I told her. We'll be too big to carry soon. I'm too big now, she said. Her statement was false. I had carried her that morning. She would have preferred an argument, but I just hitched up my socks. My sister was dear to me that spring because of the dreams in which she died. It was cool under the juniper. I tried to sleep there once, but the robots and the spotlights kept me up. I don't know who spared the old bush, but I was grateful because it had grown right through the fence along the farm's edge, hiding a place where the barbed wire had snapped. If anyone had cared to look, they could have slipped into the farm just as we did. There was a lot left to discover when I was 12 and she was 6. But no one ever looked. No one stopped on Loft Mountain Road. The realtor called our house disadvantaged because the rare earth operation ran almost to our driveway. From Maddie's window, all you saw were miles of pumps and refining crucibles and molebots rubbing around in the extraction fields and the camera towers and the huge green gumdrops of the wastewater tanks. On busy days, the walls of the house would tremble against your hand. I had dreams I was inside the dishwasher. I still think of that and laugh. Uphill from the mine was another world, however. Uphill was Loft Mountain and a great sprawling neglected farm. Dad said the dirty mine itself was why the farm still existed, that no one wanted to cover a mountainside with condos with all this loud, ludicrous bullshit going on below. I didn't hate the mine like Dad. In fact, I never understood how we could be so lucky, how we could have our own secret juniper door into the lands above, how our good fortune could unspool in this manner day after day. Sometimes the cameras would change directions and follow you. Did that matter? A camera never hurt anyone, and they lost interest when you got to the fence. I'm ready, Dial. And that's where I'll stop so you get a little flavor of it. And here's a copy of the book. So we're going to do the last 2 drawings.
And this one, I believe, is for both the e-bundle, Dreams 1 and 2 anthologies, and also the print bundle of the 2 anthologies, and also another Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop 2-hour one-day workshop. So we'll do 2. Let's see, let's do a purple one. This one is Barbara Smith.
Is there a...
If you're here, Barbara, just say so in the chat.
I see her. I see Barbara Smith.
Barbara, but we suspect you are here, so.
Yeah, second one. This is our final drawing of the night, and then we're about done.
All right. Let's do last name. And with this red one. Dave Conklin. Dave, are you here? I see him. Yeah, Dave, he says
Okay.
here. Wonderful.
Great.
Congratulations. So Dave Conklin and Barbara Smith are our final winners here.
All right, I'm just going to say thank you all for coming. Thank you for all the writers for reading. Thank you, Joy. And of course, thank you, Ellie, for being our guest editor for this book. It's really pretty special. And please spread the word. Let people know about it. We really want this to go out and have people hear and read what's in your book and also help out. Learn about the Rosenberg Fund for Children.